Chapter 1. A Desperate Situation. The rain was relentless. It pounded the roof of Kevin Hart's sleek black Tesla, drumming like 1,000 tiny hammers. The windshield wipers worked overtime, struggling to keep up with the torrent. Kevin squinted through the downpour, watching the blurry lines of trees and hills as they passed in a blur, his fingers tightening on the steering wheel. His schedule was tight today. In just an hour, he was supposed to be at a high-profile business meeting, one that could potentially change everything for him. It was one of those deals that only came around once in a lifetime. He had to get there. No excuses. He checked the time on the dashboard, his eyes flicking nervously between the clock and the road. The meeting was in the city, and he needed to be there in 45 minutes, but the storm was making every second feel like an hour. The traffic was slowing, and his pulse quickened as the clouds overhead seemed to press down on him like a weight, the air thick with impending disaster. The wipers swished back and forth, the sound almost too much to bear as the wind whipped the rain sideways. He muttered to himself, cursing the timing. Come on, he grumbled, trying to will the car to go faster. Just as he was about to switch lanes, the car jolted violently, throwing him against the side of his seat. The unmistakable sound of a tire bursting filled the cabin, followed by a sickening thud, thud, thud. Kevin's heart skipped a beat as the car veered to the side of the road. He took his foot off the gas, struggling to maintain control as the rain intensified, blurring his vision even more. No, 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 Kevin shouted, slamming the brakes. The car finally came to a halt on the narrow shoulder of the road. The engine idled, its hum barely audible over the storm. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. His tire was completely flat. His mind raced as he glanced around. There was nothing but endless fields on both sides, rolling hills stretching far beyond his line of sight. The kind of desolate place that would look picturesque under a clear sky, but now it was just an endless, lonely stretch of nowhere. Kevin slammed his hand against the steering wheel, his frustration mounting. He had no phone service. Absolutely none. No roadside assistance. No backup plan. His luxury car wasn't even equipped with a spare tire. He'd left that up to the professionals. Today, however, he was on his own, facing down a flat tire in the middle of nowhere, with only minutes to spare before his big meeting. All right, Kevin, get it together, he muttered, trying to calm himself. He reached into the trunk, hoping to find something that would get him back on the road. He stared at the spare tire in the back of the car, his heart sinking as he realized just how little he knew about actually changing a tire. He knew what it looked like. He'd seen it done 100 times. But that didn't mean he was in any way equipped to do it himself. He slammed the trunk shut in frustration, his shoes sinking into the muddy ground as he stepped out into the downpour. The cold rain immediately soaked through his jacket, the chill biting at his skin as the wind slapped him in the face. He gritted his teeth, struggling to maintain his composure. This is not happening, he muttered to himself. I swear to this is insane. Kevin paced, his mind racing. He had no signal, no way to call for help, and no idea what to do next. He looked around again, hoping to see some sign of life. Not a car in sight, not even a house. Just wide-open fields and an unbroken stretch of wet asphalt. His thoughts were starting to spiral. What if he didn't make it to the meeting on time? What if this was the one deal that slipped through his fingers? He could lose everything. His career, his reputation, hell, even his spot in the luxury car club. He ran his hand through his hair, pacing back and forth like a madman. Okay, maybe if I walk to the next exit, I can find some help. This isn't the end. This is just a setback, Kevin muttered under his breath. Just as he was about to turn and walk down the road, he heard something. Laughter, faint at first, then louder. He paused, squinting into the storm. It wasn't just the wind playing tricks on him. There were people coming toward him. And not just one person, but three. 3 figures on bicycles, pedaling towards him through the downpour like it was the most normal thing in the world. Their laughter echoed over the rain. Kevin blinked in disbelief. Were they teenagers? Riding bikes in the middle of a storm? As they got closer, he could make out their faces. 3 young black boys, no older than 15 or 16. They were drenched, their mismatched raincoats covered in mud, but they still seemed to be having the time of their lives. The tallest of the three, a boy with curly hair and a grin that could light up a room, looked at Kevin and shouted above the storm, "Hey, mister, need some help?" Kevin's jaw dropped. "What? You've got to be kidding me." He glanced at their bikes again, still unsure if he was dreaming. Yeah, I've got a flat tire," Kevin said, gesturing helplessly toward the shredded rubber. The boy in the blue raincoat gave a confident nod. "No problem. We can fix it," he said, his friends Tony and Malik nodding in agreement. Kevin blinked again, still processing the fact that this was happening. "No way. I don't know. You sure you guys know how to do this?" Kevin asked, trying to maintain some semblance of control, but his voice was tinged with disbelief. The boy in the blue raincoat, Ethan, grinned widely. "Don't worry, man. We've done this loads of times. Well, mostly on bikes, but it's the same idea." Kevin watched as they moved with a calm and efficiency he would have never expected from a group of teenagers. Ethan handed his bike to Tony and crouched next to the car. "You got a spare tire, right?" Ethan asked, wiping rain from his glasses. Kevin nodded, still in shock, as he opened the trunk. "It's in there," he muttered, stepping aside. Within seconds, Tony had pulled out the jack and a wrench. Malik positioned himself behind the car to steady it. Ethan took the lead, loosening the lug nuts with ease. "You don't mind getting wet, do you?" Kevin asked, half in jest. "It's just rain," Malik replied with a shrug. "We're already soaked anyway." As they worked, Kevin couldn't help but watch in awe. The rain came down in sheets, but the boys didn't stop. They laughed and joked as they worked, completely unfazed by the weather, their teamwork smooth and natural. The tire was off, the new one was on, and just like that, they were done. Ethan wiped his hands on his already dirty raincoat with a grin. "Done," he said, standing up and stretching. Kevin blinked in amazement. "Wait, what? You're done? Just like that?" "Yep," Ethan said, clearly proud of himself. Kevin's disbelief only grew. He stared at the car, then back at the boys. They had actually done it, completely and utterly without any problems. "Well, I gotta thank you," Kevin said, reaching for his wallet. "Let me at least give you guys some money. You earned it." Ethan waved his hand dismissively. "Nah, mun. We were just passing by and thought we'd help. You looked like you needed it." Tony nodded. "Yeah, besides, you need to get to your meeting, right?" Kevin was dumbfounded. No one had ever turned down money so easily. "You're sure?" he asked, still processing. "Yeah, we're sure," Ethan said with a grin. "Just drive safe, okay?" Kevin stood there, watching them as they hopped back on their bikes. As they rode off, their laughter echoed in the distance, and for the first time in a long time, Kevin felt a strange warmth settle in his chest. He climbed back in his car, the flat tire now replaced. He glanced at the dashboard clock and saw that he still had time to make it to his meeting. But oddly enough, it wasn't the deal that occupied his thoughts. It was the three boys, their kindness, their laughter, their willingness to help a stranger for nothing in return. As he drove off in a storm, Kevin couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted inside him. Something had changed, and he wasn't sure what it was yet, but he knew it was something important. Chapter 2: The Unexpected Help. Kevin Hart sat in his car, feeling the tension in his shoulders begin to loosen as the rain finally started to ease. He was on his way to the meeting, having managed to get the tire fixed by those three teenagers, Chris, Malik, and Tyler, and now he was reflecting on what had just happened. He'd never been in a situation like that before. Sure, he was used to solving problems, fixing things, but this felt different. For a moment, he replayed the scene in his head, how they just appeared out of nowhere like they were straight out of a movie, the storm and everything else forgotten in the face of their quiet efficiency. The fact that they'd helped him without hesitation, without asking for anything in return, had left him utterly dumbfounded. In a world where every transaction came with a price, here were three teenagers who didn't want anything but to be kind. Kevin couldn't help but think, what's wrong with me? I mean, I'm a guy with a lot of stuff, right? But these kids, they've got something I've been missing for a long time. Maybe it's time I got back to the basics. Maybe this is what real humanity looks like. He shook his head and laughed at himself. Man, I'm overthinking it. Focus, Kevin. Focus on the meeting. Don't get soft. But it was hard to shake off the memory of those kids. Their laughter in the storm, their work ethic, their simple generosity, it had been the purest thing he'd experienced in years. And the strange thing was, it wasn't even their actions that stuck with him the most. It was how he'd felt afterwards. He wasn't just grateful, he felt inspired. Kevin arrived at the towering skyscraper just as the rain began to let up, the gray clouds parting ever so slightly to let in some sunlight. The valet opened the door for him, a friendly but curious glance following Kevin's mud-splattered suit. Had a bit of a rough drive, huh? The valet joked, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Yeah, well, you know how it is. You can't predict the weather, Kevin replied, forcing a smile as he stepped out of the car. His thoughts weren't on the meeting right now. They were on the boys. He couldn't stop thinking about them. The meeting itself was a blur. Kevin went through the motions, presenting with the same charisma that had made him successful, but his mind kept wandering back to those boys. Every question they asked, every dollar figure he presented, felt insignificant compared to the sense of purpose he'd felt just hours before on that muddy stretch of road. By the time the meeting ended, he had secured the deal. It was big, monumental, a potential game changer, but somehow it felt hollow. When he shook hands with the investors and watched them file out, all he could think about was the selflessness of the three boys, Chris, Malik, and Tyler. What's going on with me? Kevin asked himself, slumping back into his chair as he watched the last of his team leave the room. I just nailed $1 billion deal, and I'm sitting here wondering about a flat tire. A flat tire, Kevin. But it wasn't about the tire. It was about the kindness those boys had shown. It was about how they had changed his perspective, something he didn't even know needed changing. He stared out the window at the city skyline, his thoughts far from the polished world of boardrooms and contracts. It hit him then. They hadn't done it for recognition. They hadn't done it to get something out of it. They had done it because it was the right thing to do. Maybe I need to do something about this, Kevin said quietly to himself, his voice almost lost to the hum of the city below. Maybe I need to give back. The next few days were a whirlwind for Kevin. There was more work, more meetings, and more travel. But in the quiet moments between his usual chaos, his mind kept returning to the three boys and their simple act of kindness. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how much he had missed, how much he had lost touch with the world outside of his fast-paced, high-stakes business life. It was one thing to be successful, but it was another to be kind, to be real. So Kevin made a decision. He was going to find those boys again. The morning sun had barely risen when Kevin decided to take action. He dressed casually, swapping his tailored suit for a navy sweater and jeans. He didn't need to impress anyone today. Today, it was about something more. He drove out of the city, the highway stretching in front of him as the early morning fog began to lift. It wasn't long before the city skyline gave way to the quiet suburbs, then to open fields and farmlands. He was heading back to that small town, the one where the boys had helped him. He didn't know what he was going to do once he got there, but he knew he had to find them. As he neared the town, he saw the familiar stretch of road where the flat tire incident had happened. He slowed down, scanning the area, wondering if he'd see the boys again. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted them. There they were, Chris, Malik, and Tyler, sitting outside a modest diner, their bikes leaning against the wall as they laughed and joked with each other, completely unaware of Kevin's arrival. Kevin parked his car across the street, took a deep breath, and crossed over to them. Hey, look who it is, Chris said, his voice full of energy. His grin was wide, as though they'd known each other for years. Kevin chuckled, his heart warming at the sight of them. You guys remember me? Huh, he said, raising an eyebrow. Of course we do, man, Malik said, flashing a smile. You're the guy with the car and the flat tire. How's that thing holding up? Better now that you guys are out of my life, Kevin said with a laugh. But seriously, I wanted to come back here. I owe you guys. Tyler, the quietest of the bunch, looked up at him. What do you mean? We just helped you out. Kevin shook his head. No, you don't get it. That wasn't just about the tire. You guys did something I hadn't seen in a long time. Just helping because it's the right thing to do. And that, it stuck with me. Ethan, the leader of the trio, looked at Kevin with a grin. Well, we were just trying to be good, you know? No need to make a big deal out of it. Kevin leaned on the bench, his tone more serious now. No, it is a big deal. You guys are teaching me something I've forgotten, so I want to get back. He paused, letting his words sink in. I'm going to help you guys, and not just with a little money. I got a bigger idea. But first, tell me something. What do you really need? The boys exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. What was this guy really up to? Well, Ethan said, there's this community center we hang out at sometimes. It's in pretty bad shape, though. They're trying to raise money to fix it up, but it's been slow. Yeah, Tony chimed in. It's where we go after school. If you could help with that, it'd be huge for everyone here. Kevin smiled. You got it, he said, nodding. I think I know exactly what we can do. And just like that, a seed was planted, a seed that would bloom into something far bigger than any of them had imagined. Chapter 3. A Thoughtful Gesture. Kevin Hart sat quietly in his car, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He had just spent the last hour talking to the three boys, Chris, Malik, and Tyler, about their community center. Their hopes, their dreams for a place that could support their neighborhood, all while it was slowly falling apart. The old building, with its leaks in the roof and broken equipment, had clearly become more than just a hangout spot for them. It was a symbol of their community's spirit. Kevin had listened intently as the boys described the state of the center. They were passionate about it, each one speaking with a kind of quiet pride that left Kevin feeling moved. But what really struck him wasn't the rundown condition of the building. It was the fact that these kids were more concerned about giving back than about taking something for themselves. They weren't asking for handouts or special favors. They just wanted to see their town thrive. As he sat in the car, reflecting on their conversation, Kevin felt a shift inside him. This wasn't just about a flat tire anymore. It wasn't just about him doing something nice to thank them for their help. This was something deeper. The boys had reminded him of a truth he'd forgotten. Life isn't just about closing deals or building empires. It's about making a difference, no matter how big or small. Kevin started the engine and pulled out of the small diner's parking lot, but his thoughts were still in the same place. He couldn't get those kids and their unassuming generosity out of his head. The community center idea had stuck with him like glue. He was determined to do something meaningful, to make a lasting impact on their lives. Not just a donation or a quick fix, but something that would show them just how much he appreciated their selflessness. As he drove back to his luxury apartment, his mind raced with ideas. He had the means to make a real difference, but it needed to be more than just writing a check. He wanted to be involved. He wanted to help guide them through the process, to be a part of something that mattered. It was time to stop living for the next business deal and start living for something bigger than himself. The next morning, Kevin woke up early. The sky was clear, and the air was crisp with the promise of a fresh start. He slipped into his favorite casual clothes, a pair of well-worn jeans and a navy hoodie, and headed straight to the office. The day was all about action. He wasn't going to let another minute slip by. Kevin made a series of calls to friends in the business world. He called up construction companies, equipment suppliers, and even some local business owners he had worked with over the years. All of them were more than happy to lend a hand. He'd seen firsthand how communities could thrive when people came together, and now he had the resources to make that happen. All right, Kevin, he muttered to himself as he set down the phone. This is it. No more waiting. We're doing this. He put together a plan, one that would bring the community together to restore the center. New roofs, new equipment, fresh paint. Everything needed to breathe new life into the place. But more than that, he wanted to bring in people who could mentor the kids, teach them about leadership, and help them find their own path to success. The center was more than just a building. It was an opportunity for growth, and he was going to be a part of that. That afternoon, Kevin returned to the small town. He had called ahead to let the boys know he was coming. And when he arrived, they were waiting for him outside the community center, their bikes propped up against the worn-out building. The smiles on their faces were enough to make Kevin's heart swell. It was clear that they had no idea what was coming next. He parked his car across the street, stepping out into the bright sunlight. The town felt different now, alive somehow, as if it were on the cusp of something big. And Kevin was about to make sure it didn't just stay a feeling. Hey guys, Kevin called out, waving as he approached the group. The boys looked up, their eyes widening in surprise. They hadn't expected him to come back so soon. Mr. Kevin, Ethan exclaimed, his grin widening. "What are you doing here?" Kevin smiled back. "I came to check out the place. And let me tell you, I've got something big for you." The boys exchanged glances, their faces full of curiosity. "What do you mean?" Malik asked. Kevin leaned in, lowering his voice slightly, as if he were about to share a secret. "I talked to some people. I made a few calls. We're going to fix up this center. New roof, new equipment, fresh paint. Everything you guys need." The boys froze for a moment, the weight of his words slowly sinking in. Then, slowly, their faces broke into huge grins. "Wait, for real?" Tyler asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "For real," Kevin confirmed, nodding. "And I'm not just talking about throwing a little money at it. I'm talking about real work. I'm going to make sure this place gets everything it deserves." Ethan shook his head, his eyes wide. "Man, you don't have to do all that. We were just trying to help." Kevin placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, smiling warmly. "No, you don't understand. You guys are doing more than helping. You're teaching me something I've forgotten. This is the kind of community spirit I've been missing. And it's about time I paid it forward." The boys looked at each other, still processing. "So, when do we start?" Malik asked, a hint of excitement in his voice. Kevin laughed, a deep, rich sound that filled the air. "We start right now," he said. "First thing tomorrow morning, we're getting to work. We'll fix this place up and make it a place everyone can be proud of. And we'll do it together." The excitement was palpable. The boys couldn't believe what they were hearing. They had always dreamed of improving the community center, but now they realized that their dream wasn't as impossible as they thought. Kevin was here, and he was going to help them make it happen. "I'll see you guys tomorrow," Kevin said, waving as he headed back to his car. He felt a sense of satisfaction settle over him as he drove away. This was just the beginning. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was finally doing something that mattered. He wasn't just helping a community center. He was helping build a future, one that wasn't just about business, but about people, about giving, and about hope. And that was more than enough for Kevin Hart. Chapter 4. Giving back in a meaningful way. The next morning, Kevin Hart arrived bright and early at the community center, ready to see his plans unfold. He pulled into the parking lot with a smile on his face, feeling a new sense of purpose that he hadn't experienced in years. The boys, Chris, Malik, and Tyler, were already there, excited and full of energy. Their bikes were lined up against the front of the building, and they were anxiously waiting for the day to begin. Kevin stepped out of his car, his boots splashing in the wet ground, and waved as he approached. The boys, their faces lit with excitement, looked up as he made his way toward them. "Morning, Mr. Kevin," Ethan greeted, his grin impossible to miss. "Good morning, fellas," Kevin replied, nodding in greeting as he took in the sight of the center. The building was as run down as it had been the last time he saw it, but now there was a sense of possibility hanging in the air, a feeling of something about to change. "So what's the plan today?" Malik asked, bouncing on his feet with anticipation. "Well," Kevin said, his voice steady with determination, "we're going to get this place fixed up. I got a crew coming in, and we'll start with the roof, then move on to everything else. Painting, new equipment, and maybe even a brand new playground. It's time to make this place look like something the whole town can be proud of." Tyler's eyes widened. "You mean it? We're going to have a real playground?" "You got it," Kevin confirmed with a wide grin. "We're going to make sure this place has everything it needs, and then some." The boys looked at each other, their faces filled with disbelief and excitement. They had dreamed of this for so long, and now, thanks to Kevin, it was finally happening. As the crew arrived, Kevin made sure to get to work right alongside them. He wasn't just there to oversee. It was clear that he was fully invested in this project. He made calls, gave directions, and even got his hands dirty when it came time to move supplies. He spent hours working side by side with the boys, laughing and joking as they started tearing down the old, damaged sections of the building. Chris, Malik, and Tyler had never worked on anything like this before, but under Kevin's guidance, they quickly got the hang of it. They helped move materials, carried tools, and assisted the construction crew however they could. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and soon, everyone in the area was pitching in. Local businesses had donated supplies, and volunteers from the neighborhood came by to help. It was exactly what Kevin had hoped for, a community coming together to help each other out. As the day went on, Kevin could see the change happening before his eyes. It wasn't just about the physical transformation of the center. It was about the energy, the spirit of collaboration that filled the air. The boys weren't just talking about improving the center anymore. They were leading the charge. Their idea for the center's renovation had taken on a life of its own. And now they were part of something bigger than any of them had ever imagined. By the time the sun began to set, the foundation for the new playground had been laid, and the roof was already halfway finished. Kevin, despite being covered in dust and paint, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was more than just a construction project. It was a way to rebuild the community itself. As the crew packed up for the day, Kevin gathered the boys together. They stood in front of the building, looking at the progress that had already been made. The walls were stripped down, the old paint removed, and the space was starting to look like something entirely new. There was still so much to do, but the transformation was undeniable. "You guys see this?" Kevin asked, his voice filled with pride. "We've come a long way today, but this is just the start. We're making this place something special." "Yeah, we can already see it," Malik said, his eyes shining with excitement. "This place is going to be amazing," Tyler added, his smile wide. Ethan, the leader of the trio, nodded. "We couldn't have done this without you, Mr. Kevin." "Seriously." Kevin shook his head, a humble smile on his face. "Nah, this is all you guys. You're the ones who made it happen. I'm just here to help make it a reality." The boys looked at each other, their faces lighting up with pride. Kevin could see it in their eyes. They were no longer just kids looking for a way to fix a broken community center. They were leaders. And this place, this community, was going to thrive because of them. As Kevin stood there, watching the sun set behind the community center, he felt a sense of fulfillment that had eluded him for so long. For years, he had chased after success in the business world, thinking that if he just had more, if he could just close one more deal, he'd feel complete. But now, he realized that real success wasn't about the deals or the money. It was about making a difference. It was about using his resources, his voice, and his platform to do something meaningful. And he was doing it right now. "Let's keep this going, fellas," Kevin said, his voice full of purpose. "Tomorrow, we get back at it. There's still a lot to do, but I know we've got it in us." With that, the boys nodded eagerly, ready to tackle the next day. They'd come so far, and now they knew that, together, they could accomplish anything. Later that night, Kevin sat in his car, parked at the side of the road, staring at the community center as it stood there, transformed even after just one day of hard work. The windows were still covered in dust, the building still incomplete, but the energy around it was unmistakable. It was the energy of hope, of a community coming together, and of young people learning the power of giving back. This wasn't just about fixing a building. This was about fixing the future. Kevin Hart had seen the power of kindness firsthand, and now he was determined to be part of a movement that would change lives, one brick at a time. And as the moon rose in the sky, he couldn't help but smile, because for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Chapter 5. The community transformed. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of activity. Kevin Hart was fully immersed in the renovations of the community center, and it seemed like every day brought something new faces, new ideas, and most importantly, new opportunities. The center was transforming right before his eyes, but more than that, the whole town was beginning to change. There was a buzz in the air, an energy that hadn't been there before. People from all walks of life were coming together, lending a hand, sharing their expertise, and pitching in however they could. From a moment the construction workers started laying down the new foundation for the playground, it was clear that this wasn't just a building project. It was the beginning of a movement. Local businesses donated supplies. Volunteers showed up on weekends to help with everything from painting walls to cleaning up the grounds, and even the teenagers from the high school started coming by, offering their time and energy. Kevin was a constant presence at the site, often rolling up his sleeves and jumping right in with the crew. While his business empire had always been about deals and strategy here on the ground, he was something different a mentor, a guide, and most of all, a leader. And as he worked alongside the boys, Chris, Malik, and Tyler, he could see the profound effect this project was having on them. They were no longer just kids dreaming about a better community center. They were young leaders, driven by a sense of purpose that was larger than anything they'd imagined. One afternoon, Kevin stood next to the playground as construction workers finished setting up the colorful swings, the jungle gym, and the slides. The sun shone brightly down, casting a golden glow over the scene as the workers stepped back, taking in their work. Kevin's eyes scanned the new playground, now complete, and his heart swelled with pride. It wasn't just a playground. It was a symbol of what could happen when people decided to come together, when they chose to build something positive, something lasting, instead of just focusing on what they could get for themselves. The next day, a grand opening event was planned. The entire town had been invited to celebrate the completion of the renovations, and everyone was buzzing with excitement. Kevin had made sure to invite the local press, but more than that, he wanted the kids to feel a sense of ownership. This was their success, their achievement. The town was about to be reminded of how much power it had within itself. As the event unfolded, families from all around the town began to gather. Parents watched as their children ran to the new playground, their laughter filling the air. People admired the newly refurbished building, the freshly painted walls, and the bright new equipment that lined the interior. Kevin stood by, watching it all unfold, surrounded by the three boys who had made it all possible. "Look at this," Kevin said, his voice filled with awe. "This is all you guys. You made this happen." Chris, Malik, and Tyler were standing next to him, grinning from ear to ear as they watched their friends and family celebrating. "We didn't do it alone," Malik said, his voice full of gratitude. "It was all the people who helped us. Everyone came together for this." "Yeah, it's like we're a part of something bigger than ourselves," Tyler added, his eyes scanning the crowd. "This place is going to change lives." Kevin smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "You're right. This is just the beginning. You guys," he paused, looking at them closely. "You've created something special, something that will last." As the day wore on, Kevin took a moment to step back and reflect. He'd spent years chasing after deals, after success, after the next big thing. But nothing had ever felt as fulfilling as standing here, watching the fruits of his labor come to life. It wasn't about the money, the fame, or the accolades. It was about knowing that in some small way, he'd been a part of something that truly mattered. The community center wasn't just a building. It was a testament to the power of kindness, of teamwork, and of giving back. It had started as a simple idea to fix up a rundown building, but now it was the heartbeat of the town, a place where kids could come together, where families could connect, and where hope could flourish. Later that evening, as the event wound down and families began to head home, Kevin found himself standing outside the center, watching the sunset over the now vibrant town. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, and the sound of laughter still echoed in the distance. "Kevin," Karen, the community center's director, said softly as she walked up beside him. "I don't think we can ever thank you enough for what you've done." Kevin turned to her, his expression serious but kind. "You don't need to thank me. It wasn't just me. It was everyone. This town, these kids, they all made this happen. I'm just happy to have been a part of it." Karen nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Well, whatever you did, you brought us all together. This place, it's going to change so many lives. And it's all because of you." Kevin smiled, the weight of her words settling in. He didn't need recognition. He didn't need praise. What mattered to him now was knowing that he had helped make a real difference. As the last of the families trickled out, Ethan, Malik, and Chris approached him, their faces filled with excitement. "Mr. Kevin," Ethan said, his voice full of energy, "we just wanted to say thank you for everything. You really helped us make this happen." Kevin bent down to their level, meeting each of their gazes. "No, thank you. You three taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn. You showed me what it means to give back, to really give back. And for that, I'm grateful." Malik grinned. "I guess we were just helping out with a flat tire." Kevin chuckled, ruffling Malik's hair. "You did more than that, man. You helped me fix something I didn't even realize was broken. Chris laughed. Well, if you ever need help again, you know where to find us. Kevin smiled warmly, feeling a sense of contentment that was unlike anything he had ever known. I think I'll take you up on that one day. As the boys waved goodbye and disappeared into the crowd, Kevin watched them go. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like something was missing. He didn't feel the emptiness that had often been a constant companion in his life. He felt whole. The community center was a symbol of what could happen when people work together. It was a reminder that kindness and generosity could change the world one small act at a time. As Kevin got into his car and drove away, the town's lights sparkling behind him, he knew that this was just the beginning. There was more to do, more to give, and more lives to touch. And for the first time in a long time, Kevin Hart was exactly where he needed to be.
If you enjoyed this story, we'd love for you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and motivates us to continue sharing heartwarming, inspiring stories almost every day.